Yes, okay.
Okay, brothers and sisters, we are meeting at a time when the world's media is replete with horrific reports from the battlefield of the ongoing Ukraine war. Scenes of heart-rending human suffering, wanton and senseless destruction of life and property, displacement of millions of people, and the brazen and ruthless obliteration of a sovereign state. The rest of the world is simply watching, apparently helpless to stop the mayhem. It is against this background that I've titled my talk as "No Peace Without Justice. Accountability Matters." While the heroic people of Ukraine and other victims of similar humanitarian tragedies worldwide yearn and fight for just peace, it is the thesis of my presentation this afternoon that a cessation of hostilities, though good, is not in and of itself sufficient. There can be no peace without justice. That justice and accountability are indispensable to achieving lasting peace, and that justice and peace are two sides of the same coin. Historically, and from time immemorial, states arrogated to themselves the right to wage war on each other. And this was reflected in the principle of jus ad bellum, or the right to wage war. Waging war was considered to be an attribute of state sovereignty. As long as this so-called right to wage war was in vogue, might made right, and not, as Abraham Lincoln put it, that right makes might. States extended their borders, acquired property from each other, solved their problems with each other, and achieved the other national interests by what Adolf Hitler called the triumphant power of the sword. This was also the case in Bible times. See, for example, King Ahab's war against the king of Aram. My brother, can you read for me from 1 Kings chapter 22, as indicated?
1 Kings chapter 22, verse 1a. Reading from the King James Version. Then it came to pass in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, went down to visit the king of Israel. And the king of Israel said to his servants, "Do you know that Ramoth in Gilead is ours? But we hasten to take it out of the hands of the king of Syria." So he said to Jehoshaphat, "Will you go with me to fight at Ramoth Gilead?" Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, "Am as you were, my people as your people, my horses as your horses." Also Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, "Please inquire from the word of the Lord today." Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, about 400 of them men and said to them, shall I go against Ramoth Gilead to fight, or shall I refrain? So they said, go up, for the Lord will deliver it into the hand of the king. And Jehoshaphat said, is there not still a prophet of the Lord here, that we may inquire of him? So the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, there is still one man, Micaiah, the son of Imri, by whom we may inquire of the Lord. But I hate him, because he does not prophesy good concerning me, but evil. And Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say such things.
Thank you, my brother. Okay, so there you were. Waging war was a sovereign right, and the state solved their problems, acquired property, extended their borders by waging war. Yet, brothers and sisters, to state the obvious, war involves the taking of human life, the destruction of property, and all the horrors that follow in its train. Taking life is contrary to the sixth commandment of the Decalogue. What does it say? Thou shalt not do what? Kill. By waging war, a state not only kills enemy citizens, but it also puts its own citizens in danger's way. To restrict the state's unbridled power to wage war and to provide a moral canopy or justification for war, Catholic theologians, particularly St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, and St. Ambrose, developed the theory of a just and unjust war. According to this theory, states were forbidden to wage war unless the war was just. However, given the intractable difficulty of defining what a just war was, and with the decline of the Catholic Church's influence in earthly matters or temporal matters, the just war theory was discredited, fell into desuetude, and was abandoned. And the right to wage war continued to reign supreme with calamitous consequences. In fairness, though, brothers and sisters, states developed what they called the rules and customs of war to regulate the way war should be conducted once it broke out. The purpose of these rules and regulations was to mitigate the horrendous effects of war. Some of these rules says, well, you don't attack and kill civilians. You don't attack and kill enemy soldiers who have laid down arms or they are wounded. You don't attack doctors and so on and so forth. You don't use certain types of wisdoms. Sad to say, ladies and gentlemen, these rules and customs of war were honored more in breach than in observance. You hear complaints of this nature from the battlefield in Ukraine. The international community attacking, criticizing Russia for violating the rules and customs of war, for senseless bombing of hospitals and killing children and the like. Now, the 20th century, ladies and gentlemen, has often been characterized as a post-imperial epoch because it witnessed the collapse of the Habsburg, Ottoman, Hohenzollern, British, and Roman empires. Sad to say again, the end of these empires did not herald a more peaceful and justice era. Instead, the century has also generally been acknowledged as one of the bloodiest in the history of humankind. Prior to two world wars, war was waged by relatively small armies and what we would today consider unsophisticated weapons, arrows, bows, and spears. simple guns and the like. Compared to what would follow, casualties were also low. However, aided by the Industrial Revolution, states developed weapons of mass destruction, which were put to use for the first time during World War I. This war, which was spurred by another theory, a great force, nationalism, produced catastrophic effects. Winston Churchill described the Great War as one that differed from all ancient wars in the immense power of the combatants and their fearful agencies of destruction, and from all modern wars in the utter ruthlessness or ferocity with which the war was fought. Brothers and sisters, was yet to come. With these experiences in mind, states acting under the auspices of the League of Nations attempted to modify the so-called right to war, to wage war, as a way of confronting the disastrous effects of World War I. Yes, and this they did in the 1928 Kellogg-Briand Pact, or the Paris Pact on the Renunciation of War. In this pact, they condemned recourse to war for the solution of international controversies and renounced war as an instrument of national policy in their relations with one another. Unfortunately, brothers and sisters, they did not repudiate the right to wage war outright. They also did not put in place mechanisms to deal with recalcitrant states. Consequently, Nazi Germany and the Axis powers repudiated this pact with impunity, and the League of Nations was impotent to stop them from plunging the world into yet another world war. Now, World War alone, ladies and gentlemen, produced more casualties than any other armed conflict in human history. 30 million people dead, millions more wounded, widowed, orphaned, and displaced, $trillions worth of property destroyed or damaged, and no wonder a tribunal based in Nuremberg in Germany characterized the war as evil. It stated, and I quote, to initiate a war of aggression is not only an international crime, it is the supreme international crime, different from other crimes in that it contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole. End of quote. The tribunal was right. War tends to bring out the worst in the combatants. Once war breaks out, it unleashes evil forces that can result in the commission of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, including such outrages as rape, torture, child abuse, pillage, and plunder of property, crimes that the tribunals of the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda and Sierra Leone have more recently so well documented with respect to the wars that took place in those countries. Ladies and gentlemen, with the sorrowful experience of World War II, the Allied Nations formed the United Nations Organization, the UN, whose overarching goal was to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which had twice in their lifetime brought untold sorrow to mankind. Did they succeed? To this end, they required all member states to resolve all international disputes, so situations which might lead to a breach of the peace by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice and international law. This requirement underscores the truism that there can be no lasting peace without justice, and that justice and law are inseparable. They are like Juno's twins. They go hand in hand, hand in glove. Accordingly, the Allied nations, Allied powers prohibited outright the so-called right to wage war, save except in self-defense. Most importantly, they established the International Court of Justice. That's where Mrs. 17 decides as a judge, to which states could refer their disputes for adjudication. They also established concrete mechanisms for dealing with rogue or offending states whose actions disturb or threaten the peace. These mechanisms include the Security Council, to which member states conferred the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. They also conferred on the Security Council power to determine the existence of any threat to the peace, breach of the peace, or act of aggression. And they have power to recommend or to decide on measures, including use of force, which may be necessary to maintain or to restore peace and security. Sadly, once again, as the current Ukraine situation reveals, when any of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council is one of those whose conduct disturbs or threatens the peace, that state cannot be called to order. It cannot be censured. The council cannot condemn it for what it has done or decide on measures that may be necessary to stop its conduct. For that reason, the council cannot say or do anything about Russia for what it is doing in Ukraine. Russia has the power to veto any decision or action that the council may deem appropriate or necessary to take to maintain or restore peace. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is outside the United Nations system, is also powerless to intervene directly. Why? For fear that Russia may retaliate with what? Nuclear weapons. I assume, brothers and sisters, that you know what a veto is. The Security Council consists of 15 members. About 5 of those are permanent members. United States, Russia, France, China, and who else? Huh? I'll repeat. The US, Russia, Britain, France, and China. Those are the 5P. Now, any decision, if a resolution, a matter comes before the council to be resolved, and any of those votes no, the decision doesn't pass. Even if 14 others say yes, just if Russia says niet, it has cast what they call the veto. And that's why the Security Council is paralyzed. NATO is a defense organization in Europe for the mutual defense of the European countries. They could have taken action, but Putin said, if you do anything, I am mobilizing my nuclear force here. And they fear that if they do anything to antagonize Russia, Putin may press the button and the whole world will be plunged in yet another catastrophic situation for mutual destruction. There we are as the mechanisms for maintenance of the peace. There we are, that's the situation. We continue. Okay, brothers and sisters, while the United Nations arrangements for maintaining peace clearly superior and more effective than those under League of Nations, of course, where the PDPs are not involved. But they do also suffer from some other severe shortcomings. The veto problem is one. We can't do anything to stop Russia right now. The other relates to justice and accountability, with which we are primarily concerned in this presentation. The Charter of the United Nations provides that all member states shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, what Russia is doing. But these provisions, ladies and gentlemen, addresses itself exclusively to state conduct, to Russia, conduct as a state. It does not focus on the conduct of individuals, particularly state officials and others of their ilk, who actually mastermind or execute acts involving the illegal use of force and the destruction and suffering that it lives in its train. Under the Charter, only the states may be held accountable for these acts and may be ordered to pay reparations for their harmful consequences. As indicated above, one of the Charter's means for solving interstate disputes, proceeding or arising out of the illegal use of force is adjudication by the International Court of Justice. Significantly, again, according to the statute of the International Court of Justice, only the states, I repeat, only the states may be parties in the cases before the court. You can't take court in there to these courts, okay? Take, for example, brothers and sisters, you come from my region. Take the example of a case which the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, filed against its neighbor, Uganda, before the International Court of Justice, following Uganda's invasion of its territory in 1998. The Democratic Republic of the Congo alleged that by that invasion, Uganda violated its territorial integrity and independence, and that its army, the UPDF, whilst in the Congo, killed or wounded hundreds of Congolese civilians, raped its women, conscripted and armed Congolese youth and children into militias to fight against their government, looted Congolese minerals and other natural resources, wantonly destroyed, damaged, and pillaged millions of dollars worth of property, and even appointed governors to administer the territory it occupied. Kazini, I remember, was a governor of one of the districts, I think in Ituri. So the DRC asked the ICJ to declare that Uganda committed aggression against it, violated its sovereignty, and occasioned it and its citizens great loss and damage. Uganda claimed in response that in invading the DRC, it was exercising the right of self-defense, and that it was trying to flush out of the DRC anti-Uganda government rebels operating from there. We are still doing so. The court rejected Uganda's claim as spurious. Instead, it found that the Republic of Uganda, by engaging in military activities against the Democratic Republic of Congo on the latter's territory, by occupying Ituri and by actively extending military, logistic, economic, and financial support to its irregular forces, having operated on its territory of the DRC, violated the principle of non-use of force and so on and so forth. The court also found that Uganda violated its obligations under international humanitarian and human rights law and ordered it to pay reparations to the DRC. The amount to be paid and the modalities of payment were to be determined by the two countries through negotiations. The DRC demanded $4.3 billion, which Uganda disputed. And as a result, the two states failed to agree. And so the matter had to go back to the court. Early this year, the court ordered Uganda to pay the DRC $325 million. May I say only? Even though this sum is much lower than the DRC had demanded, it's still a lot of money for a poor country like Uganda, whose citizens wallow in abject poverty and lack basic essential services. Here I may ask you, brothers and sisters, who is going to pay all this money to the DRC? Who? The poverty-stricken citizens of Uganda. It is doubtful again whether the ordinary Congolese citizens who suffered so much as a result of Uganda's invasion of their country received any justice from this litigation. Another example is from the Gulf War. Following the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990, the international community exacted reparations from and imposed a host of economic and other types of sanctions on Iraq. The effects of those measures on the civilian population were horrendous. Thousands of children and members of other vulnerable groups died for lack of food and medicine because Iraq could not sell its soil and could not buy medicine. The Iraqi children, members of other vulnerable groups, were thus punished for conduct for which they were not responsible. Equally unfortunate, the measures did not produce any change of behavior in the conduct of the Iraqi state or its leaders. Do these measures comport with the UN Charter's call for peace in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, I ask? Do they comport with the principles of justice? I have said no. Can this be justice? Moreover, when the individuals most responsible for the commission of the conduct, such as that committed by Uganda or Iraq and now by Russia, are not held accountable, those individuals are likely to continue to engage in similar conduct with impunity, hiding behind the mask of the state. They know that nothing will be done to them in their personal or individual capacity. Yet, brothers and sisters, in a polity governed by the rule of law, every person is accountable for everything he or she does. Indeed, brothers and sisters, according to Romans chapter 14, verse 12, on the day of judgment, each one of us will give an account of himself to who? To God. And the first angel of Revelation 14 announces with a loud voice that the hour of God's judgment what? Has come or is near. If we are not accountable for what we do, then we will continue to do evil to each other and to engage in activities that disturb the peace of others, of our neighbors, knowing that nothing will be done to us. Accountability then, I submit, ladies and gentlemen, is essential to justice. It is essential to deter us. To address the inadequacy of the law under the Charter and to advance the end of justice and peace, the Allied Nations established the Nuremberg, what we call the Nuremberg and the Tokyo tribunals, which sought to prosecute and punish the major architects and perpetrators of the recently ended the Second World War and its accompanying horrors. The judges at Nuremberg so aptly said that crimes against international law are committed by men, not by abstract entities. Crimes against the people of the Congo were committed by who? Those individuals in Entebbe. Crimes against the people of Ukraine are committed people in what? The Kremlin, okay? Not as abstract state. And only by punishing individuals who commit such crimes can the provisions of international law be enforced. In other words, it's only by punishing responsible individuals who committed or ordered the commission of the atrocities of Nazi-occupied Europe, or in the DRC, or in Kuwait, or now in Ukraine, can the law be upheld. Impunity held in check, justice done, and peace assured. What then, brothers and sisters, is the objective and significance of trial and punishment of individual, we're talking about individual wrongdoers. Laban, kindly read to us Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 1 to 3. What does it say?
Deuteronomy 25, verses 1 to 3. If there is a dispute between men and they come to court, that the judge may judge them, and they justify the righteous and condemn the wicked, then it shall be, if the wicked man deserves to be beaten, that the judge will cause him to lie down and be beaten in his presence, according to his guilt, with a certain number of blows. 40 blows he may give him, and no more. Lest he should exceed this and beat him with many blows above these, and your brother be humiliated in your sight.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Trial and punishment. What's the significance? What's the purpose? Brothers and sisters, trial is the process by which guilt or innocence of the accused is determined. Of course, trial must be fair. If it is not fair, for example, if the accused is tortured to force him to confess, or if the accused is not allowed to defend himself, more injustice will be done, and there will be no justice. I shall not say any more about this. Rather, I shall dwell more on punishment. As we've read from Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 1 to 3, let me read that again in the New International Version. I shall read that in the New International Version. When men have a dispute, they are to take it to court. To take it where? To court. And the judges will decide the case, acquitting the innocent and condemning the guilty. If the guilty man deserves to be beaten, the judge shall make him lie down and have him flogged in his presence with the number of lashes his crime deserves. But he must give him no more than 40. If he's flogged more than that, your brother will be degraded in your eyes. Brothers and sisters, let us note a few salient points from this text. First of all, it talks about men having a dispute. It means that one person has wronged another. In the context of egregious conduct or heinous crimes, the wrong ceases to be one committed against an individual victim and becomes a wrong committed against the entire community. And then it becomes a crime. When it is so heinous, so wicked, as to deeply shock the conscience of humanity, then it becomes what we call an international crime. According to a tribunal at Nuremberg, an international crime is such act universally acknowledged as criminal, which is considered a grave matter of international concern, and for some valid reason cannot be left within the exclusive jurisdiction of the state that would have control over it under ordinary circumstances. Secondly, when the judges find the person complained against guilty and it deserves being beaten, then they must order that he be flogged. That is said, he must be punished. Why does he deserve to be punished, ladies and gentlemen? Because his conduct has disturbed the harmony of the community. And he must be taught that involvement in crime or such conduct has unpleasant consequences. Third, note that the number of lashes to be administered must be those that his crime deserves. It means that the punishment must be proportionate to the gravity or seriousness of the crime, depending on the amount of harm inflicted, the extent of damage caused, and the degree of the offender's culpability or moral blameworthiness. This is what we call retributive justice or justice deserves. Fourth, note also that the lashes were not to exceed 40. Otherwise, the accused would be degraded. There must be no excesses. The offender remains a brother whose inherent dignity as a fellow human being must be respected. He or she is punished not to satisfy the sadistic desires of the judges or those in authority, but to satisfy societal need for justice. Note also that at the time Moses penned the text we've read, flogging was a common form of punishment. Not so today. Many countries consider corporal punishment to be inhuman and degrading and have abolished it. In the United States, you would consider it to be cruel and what? And unusual punishment. Okay. Now, in a recent case before the Special Tribunal for Lebanon, where I am privileged to serve, the accused were alleged to have detonated military type explosives in a business center of the city of Beirut in broad daylight. And as a result of that, 22 people, how many? 22. Including the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Mr. Rafik Hariri, were killed, and at least 226 others were injured. Buildings were also damaged, and other property as well. The accused were subsequently convicted of, among other crimes, conspiracy to commit a terrorist act and of murder of the 22 people and attempted murder of the 226 people. Last month, before I was going to say last month, we pronounced the sentence. I said we pronounced, I say this with all humility and trepidation and with fear and trembling. I'm telling you not to justify this what we did, but just to inform you what was did. But before I tell you, the jury is open. You heard the facts. You are one of us. Now, you are at large. What sentence you pronounced? How many people were killed?
226.
No, 22.
22.
And 222 were 226 were injured, severely, okay, property destroyed, and terrorism includes terror, and the whole country was terrorized. One of you were in my shoes on the panel. Now in Uganda, if somebody murdered one person, it could be what? Well, one of the maximum sentence is what? Hanging. Yeah. Okay, now. All right, now.
Those shoes are too heavy for me to
Too heavy. That's why you are dreaming. Where is the young man at the back? You are listening. No, you're partially okay. Okay, I was going to. You should aspire to step into my shoes. Okay. You have a sister there. She was listening. Yeah. What sentence would you pronounce? Now, to save you the trouble, in our court, we are not allowed to pass a death sentence. We are not. So you are relieved. What else? But anything else you can do.
Life in prison. Life.
Yeah, life. I see. Okay. Like, you think that they deserve that?
Yes, and more.
And more? Okay. By the way, the laws of Lebanon, and if they are before the laws of Lebanon, they would have been hanged. But luckily, I say this with trepidation, with fear and trembling. Okay, we followed your what you are saying. We pronounce life imprisonment. They were charged with many, all these attempted murder, all these things. Yeah, on each of them, life imprisonment, because the crimes were so heinous. The effects so horrendous, and they were so wicked in their motivations that they deserved the highest. That's why the Deuteronomy is that you should pronounce the crime that they deserve. And thus, I say this with fear again. That's what we did. And we didn't think these were accessible. I heard you said you could have sentenced more if you could have, you did. You had the power to do so. Okay. Now listen, the special tribunal for Sierra Leone, while also sentencing Mr. Charles Taylor. You heard of Mr. Charles Taylor?
Yes.
By the way, he was the president of Liberia, And while in Liberia, he sent troops and to do all sorts of things in Sierra Leone. Terrible crimes, so he was charged with aiding and abetting, supporting and giving them money, sending them weapons and directing them. Now, this tribunal sentenced him to 50 years of imprisonment for what it described as some of the most heinous and brutal crimes recorded in human history. But by the way, they cut off people's ears, chopped people's hands off and things like that. Now, this court said the lives of many more innocent civilians in Sierra Leone were lost or destroyed as a direct result of his actions. As a president and as commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Liberia, Mr. Taylor used his unique position, including his access to state machinery and public resources, to aid and abet the commission of crimes in Sierra Leone, rather than using his power to promote peace in the region. The court also added that leadership must be carried out by example, by the prosecution of crimes, not commission of crimes. When you are president, you should prosecute those who commit crimes. You should not yourself commit crimes. You should not order people to do some of the things we see being done in our country, in our region. No, you shouldn't do it. Now, brothers and sisters, these words encapsulate the very essence of the rule of law: accountability and equality before the law. And these words must resonate with the crescendo, not throughout Africa and beyond. In sum, then, the significance of punishment of persons convicted of crimes, particularly heinous international crimes, is that it ensures that the perpetrators of such crimes receive their just deserts and do not continue to violate the law and to hurt others with impunity, knowing that nothing will be done to them. Secondly, it signals the community's disapproval and condemnation of their conduct. Third, it acts as a deterrent, not only to them, those who are accused, but also to the offenders of what might happen to them if they repeat or commit crime. And lastly, it ensures that the perpetrators are not allowed to profit from their crimes. Another significance of the trial and punishment of perpetrators is that it serves to vindicate the victims and their rights, and to bring about healing, which is vital to a peaceful life and reconciliation in the community. Often, victims, particularly those who have lost their loved ones as a result of crime, do not desire money, because money will not bring back, it will not. All they want is justice to be done. If victims and their crimes are neglected, these victims may be tempted to resort to what? Revenge. And to exact retribution, and to draw attention to the denied historical fact, and leading to an inevitable renewal of a cycle of justice, of violence rather, to lead to a cycle. Okay. Now, this finally, brothers and sisters, this brings us to the role of International Criminal Court, where again, by the grace of God, I was blessed to serve as judge of the appeals chamber. Ordinarily, crimes committed on the territory of a state are triable only by that state. crimes committed in the US are tried only by the courts of the United States. Ordinarily, the courts committed in the territory of Uganda are tried only by the courts of Uganda. But not so with respect to international crimes, which we have noted are of concern to the international community as a whole. Although committed on the territory of Uganda, those crimes are of concern to the international community as a whole. So they are within the jurisdiction of any other country, all right? Other states or body of states also have jurisdiction over them and can try their perpetrators. Otherwise, they will never be tried, because the perpetrators are invariably powerful individuals who control the state apparatus, the state machinery. They are invariably committed by people in power, and you don't expect those people to bring charges against themselves. That is why detached or independent international tribunals, such as the Nuremberg and Tokyo tribunals, or the tribunals for the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Cambodia, and Kosovo, were set up to try individuals responsible for the heinous crimes committed in those countries. It is nonetheless noteworthy, brothers and sisters, that these tribunals were set up only after the defeat of Hitler and his Japanese allies, or after the overthrow of the regimes in Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Cambodia, or Kosovo, of which those individuals were part. You probably also remember what happened to Saddam Hussein of Iraq. It was only after he was overthrown, captured, that a tribunal was quickly set up to try him. And within hours, he was sentenced and hanged. Now, we therefore characterize those tribunals as victors' justice. Those tribunals represent victors' justice. These tribunals have also been faulted as representing select justice. Why? They were set up to deal with episodes that occurred in specific countries during specific times only. Yet, there were many other troubling situations in the world where egregious crimes were committed and the persons responsible for their commission deserved trial and punishment, but were beyond the reach of those tribunals. Now, when the special tribunal for Rwanda, when the International Tribunal for Rwanda was being set up, it was provided that only crimes committed under 1994 were to be tried by that court. Now, attempts were made to say, no, let's extend the power, the jurisdiction, the power of this court beyond 94, beyond after Kagame had seized the power, because Kagame was no saint. Other terrible things were committed. Kagame said against my dead body. So it was limited only to those crimes that were committed before Kagame took over, but not after, okay? So we call that selective justice. Therefore, what the world needed or needs is a permanent, independent international court with the power to try atrocity crimes committed at any time, in any court and in any part of the world. Not select justice, or not after the overthrow of somebody. Even a regime, somebody who is in power should be tried before he does more harm. Thank God, when the propitious time came, such a court was established in Rome in 1998. It is the international court. It is we call it the International Criminal Court, the ICC, with the power to try individuals suspected of committing genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and aggression. These are the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole. Now, the court's potential for perpetual existence puts on permanent notice would-be tyrants and dictators that there is in The Hague a prosecutor, there is a court with a prosecutor who is monitoring their actions and potentially has power to bring them before its judges for trial. And when they find them guilty, to impose on them the punishments that they deserve. The court can try an individual for any of the crimes within its mandate if he or she commits the crime on the territory of a state that has signed on to the statute of the court, or who is a national of a state that has signed on to that statute, or has been referred to the court by the United Nations Security Council. Now, the UN Security Council referred to Libya. Libya did not sign on, and Gaddafi was still president. The Security Council referred this case to the ICC. Unfortunately, passed away before he could be tried, but he faced kangaroo justice at home. But his son was indicted. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm about to conclude. Under customary international law and under the constitutions of most countries of the world, including Uganda, heads of state or government cannot be tried or sued before the national courts. You see, this is a problem we have of trying these people at home domestically. But in contrast, under the ICC, no one, whatever one's rank or status, is immune or exempt from trial or punishment by that court. If some individuals were immune from prosecution and punishment, then, brothers and sisters, the fight against impunity will be ineffectual. For that reason, the court has dealt with heads of state and top government leaders such as Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, including and his son, al-Bashir of the Sudan, Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto of Kenya, Gbagbo of the Ivory Coast, Jean-Pierre Bemba of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, all top government leaders. Unfortunately, brothers and sisters, because virtually all persons the court has so far dealt with have been from Africa, some African states have complained that the court was targeting only Africa, trying to humiliate Africans, and to sabotage African independence. They have also developed an antipathy towards the court and threatened to leave it, and have even proposed a regional African court which grants immunity to serving heads of state and high state of ranking officials. Brothers and sisters, the complaints I'm talking about, those complaints are baseless. I will elaborate if you ask. The court does not go out of its way to target Africans. Moreover, the fact that you cannot catch all burglars should not stop you from catching the ones you can. You got that? The establishment of the ICC was a great leap forward. But as we say in Uganda, Gachari, so little done and so much to do. There's a lot that needs to be done before the court's full impact can be felt throughout the world. Powerful states such as the US, China, Russia, India, Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia are not part of the court. These states must be persuaded to join the fold to ensure that the whole globe is blanketed with law and with justice, and that no country remains a safe haven for international criminals. Above all, brothers and sisters, no country should consider itself exceptional and insulate itself and its citizens from the long arm of global justice. But from a broader conception of justice, it is incumbent on all states to prevent war and other acts of mass violence in the prophylactic sense. Ms. Kigura would help me with that word, prophylactic sense, like prevent malaria, by addressing the root causes of war and mass violence. They must address the issues of economic disparity, racism, tribalism, political and religious intolerance, and all other forms of societal inequities that force people to resort to war and violence. Their education systems must inculcate in the minds of their citizens, particularly the young, the idea of the oneness, brotherhood, and equality of all human beings. This kind of education is vital to avert the kind of prejudice and hatred that triggered the genocide in Nazi Germany, and more recently in the Balkans and Rwanda, or the senseless massacre we recently witnessed in Buffalo. Those people who killed those people, they did so because of it. Now, to conclude, brothers and sisters, King Solomon wrote in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 15, that when justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. The ICC and other earthly justice agencies attempt to do justice, to repress impunity, ensure accountability, and to uphold the rule of law. Unfortunately, as human institutions, they are imperfect, weak, and often ineffectual. In contrast, when the first angel of Revelation 14 admonishes all who live on the earth to fear God and give him glory, because the hour of God's judgment has come, his intention is not to instill terror in us. Rather, it is to let us know of God's plan to establish here on earth a permanent system of justice that is perfect, righteous, fair, and effectual, and to prepare us for it with joyful expectation. It is only God's system of justice that assures us perfect and lasting peace. What makes God's system of justice most attractive is that while it requires accountability, it is tempered with grace, amazing grace. You probably remember the thief on the cross, don't you?
Oh, yes.
That is good news. He said, Lord, remember me. And what did Christ said? I tell you this day, he paid what he deserved, but he got justice, perfect justice for in the new earth where dwells all righteousness. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nsereko. Does anyone of you have a question for him?
You can also comment.
There you go.
And I open up to so many issues that I didn't know about. My question is on African leaders. Why don't we have like an African court which handles issues for African leaders? Once the court has failed, then it's passed to the international criminal court. But why don't we first? Why isn't it first handled by Africa? Because we know ourselves and I think that we understand each other better. So once we want to what the case to the criminal court, then we're able to first. The other question I have is that can we really have like full justice here? For example, if somebody kills my child, what justice can I receive? Because even if I say, okay, even if the court says, okay, we are going to take your child too because you killed the other person's child, I feel it might not be a full justice because the pain that I went through might not be the pain that this person is. And if he dies, still I don't want him to die because he doesn't know anything now. He's dead. I don't know, can we really have full justice or we can only the courts here on earth can give like partial justice just to make the person feel better, but I don't know.
Okay, thank my brother. That last question, other people will chip in, but that's why I said the only perfect justice we can get is from the earth made in you. Yeah, in a perfect system, but that's a theological question which other members of the group can chip in on. You feel you will not get justice, and you probably are right. And that one I can't say anything.
All right.
But the first question, the other one, why don't we have an African court? What you are saying is what they are saying. But they are saying, but we are setting up an African court, but presidents will not be charged. And we have no problems with other criminals. The problems we have currently in Africa are the presidents. They are the ones who are committing these atrocities. Those are the ones who don't want to be charged by any court. And their constitutions say, no, you can't. Okay. Now, but Kenya was wise. They formed their constitution says once you are charged with this kind of crimes, there is no immunity. That's why Mr. Ruto, no, Uhuru Kenyatta was charged before the ICC, but then he was a candidate and he's VP. Okay, they were elected. Once they were elected, now the witnesses that we are going to testify against them at the ICC now said, no, we will not be able to go to the Hague to give evidence. The evidence that was available against them disappeared mysteriously. And then the court had no evidence to act against, to use against them. And the case could not proceed. There you are. That's exactly what they have, but they don't want the presidents to be charged because they are presidents. That's the dilemma. But otherwise, we call it. All right. For example, there is Dominic Ongwen. Have you heard?
Yes.
They have a special court in Uganda trying him, but Connie was sent to the Hague. By the way, the African states had no problems with the ICC. And in fact, the African courts, the African states were the greatest supporters of the court. They have more signatories than any other continent. But immediately charges were brought against Uhuru Kenyatta, against Bashir. That's when they started the opposition. Yes, ma'am.
This one. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. My question, I don't know if it's outside the court, but it's within the United Nations. Like what can, because I understand the United Nations is there to bring peace to the world, but I understand some of these wars we see, like Ukraine, they were anticipated, and the United Nations was right there looking at them, because they were telling us, oh, they are going to attack Ukraine. So would there be a scenario where the United Nations comes in and stop the war before it happens?
They could, provided one of the permanent peace is not involved or their allies. They have theoretical power, unless, but then the politics comes in. Where United Kingdom, United States, Russia, China, and France are involved, nothing will be done. The system is imperfect. This is the problem we face. Politics, imperfect peace. This is the dilemma, and we all just, what can we, you see so much injustice going on, but the international community is powerless to do anything. NATO has the power to stop Russia, but it says if you do it, Putin says I'll retaliate with nuclear weapons. Then this is the world we live in.
So, like Dr. Nsereko, I have a comment and a question. I had so many questions, but your last submission answered them all. We are in an imperfect world. You only expect one question. But my question is, why does it, they say that justice delayed is justice denied? Why is it that most of the cases which go to the ICJ and ICC take too long a time, that sometimes by the time sentences are passed, it's like we got used to that. It's like it doesn't come like music. It's like we have healed. Why do they take that long?
A good question is because those cases, first of all, they are very complex. They require a lot of investigation, and they involve so many people. and hundreds of witnesses, and expertise, and they are tried by a court that is distant in The Hague. That's where probably it will be okay if they are tried closer home. And the ICC does not have a police force of its own, does not have an army to go and force witnesses to come and go and just get all those documents from a government office. It depends on the cooperation of states. These are contributing factors towards the delay. Yes. We have a system of complementarity. We say, okay, you try those crimes domestically, but do so in accord with certain standards. But if when you fail, when we see that you are trying to cover up or do that, then matters will go to the ICC. But invariably, you can't, as things stand, you can't depend on the national systems, because you do not get justice under current situations.
One more, and then we'll round up.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I wanted to know at what point did you become an Adventist? Were you born an Adventist or just converted? Because our children are discouraged to take that course, and they are saying as Christians they cannot be truthful to their job because there is a lot of interpretations as lawyers. I understand there is a way to interpret laws, and someone who is supposed to be judged differently is judged. Why do you advise that?
What was the first question?
Were you born an Adventist or just born?
By the way, you can't be born an Adventist. Yeah, you can't be born at Seventh Day. I don't know, it's a theological question. In fact, you become one almost every day.
You're right.
Personal decision. Yeah, but it's your children think that law is about telling lies. That's another big lie. Why do they say lawyers cannot be truthful? You are saying, my sister, you are saying I am not. But I am imperfect. By the way, it is what you make it. It's what the individual is. Whether you're a teacher, a doctor, an accountant, at every stage there is a temptation to do the wrong thing. It's what it's a decision.
I just want to contribute a concern. I think a concern is the defense counsel. As a defense counsel, you apply the law to defend your client.
Yes.
Manipulate them. They take it as manipulating the law in favor of your client.
You are not manipulating. You are interpreting the law as you understand it. And by the way, the duty of defense counsel is not to judge. The duty of defense counsel, or the what do you call this? State is to present the case before the judges, and they decide. Each side tries to put up the best case for its client and leave it to the judges to decide, to judge. Your duty is to present to the best of your ability. In fact, I've told the students, but of course, lawyers are not supposed to tell lies. If a client comes and tells you, I did it, as a lawyer. It's unethical. Then to go to court and tell the judge that no, we're not allowed to do that. But within whatever it tells you, yes, I killed, but it was self-defense. I was provoked, or I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was doing. And this is what you call interpretation. And it's up to the judge to say, oh, he was not in his right mind. And to another person, I would think that he was let off the hook. But he was not. The law says if you are not in your right mind, you cannot be convicted. Or if you are not of age, you have no capacity to commit a crime. Right. Now, if you are charged with a traffic offense and you didn't stop at but then you say, but I didn't see the white line. And it probably it was you didn't see it. You didn't stop, it's correct, but you had to know what we call mens rea with criminal intent. So please encourage the children to study law. We need the right people to be in my position. I can't say that lawyers are saints. Every profession has groups. We need the right people in all these professions. The church has general conference has about 10 lawyers representing it. One time in Uganda, a pastor who has never been to court, who had that mindset that the lawyers are liars. He avoided the court as much as he can, but then he was charged. He was charged wrongly. And then he had to be defended. He went trembling. He said, don't worry. And he was acquitted. He went out, shouting, now I know. Lawyers are also savers. Okay.
Thank you very much, Brother Daniel, for that presentation.
Jesus Christ was charged wrongly. You can't, in this world, you can never avoid this. You need lawyers at every step of your life, to people who know the law. But there are those who will manipulate it, particularly where you have to be careful are the judges. And the Bible is very clear in Deuteronomy. You law judges, don't take bribes. Act justly in Deuteronomy. That's why it's very important. But before you come where I am, you have to be a lawyer first. I'm so privileged. I'm so privileged. God is so good to me. Amen. And to you, that by God's grace, I've represented you. Amen. And that an Adventist can be there and do the job. But every time you enter that room, you have to pray for God's guidance. You have to pray for Solomon's wisdom. Nothing is straightforward.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Tuyige okuba engalo obulungi tusema asante sana. Yongeza tena mara moja.
Thank you, thank you. Now you have already 1 hour for dinner. At 5:30, we come back. Where's my so what? Yeah, so